Life has a way of making us feel like we have to be in control of everything. We plan, we strategize, we set goals, and we do our best to make things happen the way we think they should. But no matter how much we prepare, there are moments when things just don't go according to plan. You pray for an opportunity and it doesn't come. You work hard for something and it falls apart. You put your trust in people and they let you down. And in those moments, it's easy to feel lost. It's easy to feel like everything is slipping through your fingers, like you're standing on shaky ground with no idea what's coming next. But let me tell you something, God is in control. Not you, not your circumstances, not the people around you, not the setbacks, not the disappointments, not the things you lost along the way. God is in control. And when you truly understand that, when you truly believe that, you will stop worrying so much about how things look right now because your life is not in your hands. It's in His. Think about this. If you're on a plane, you don't sit there trying to fly it yourself, do you? No, you trust the pilot. You trust that they know the route, that they have the skills to navigate the turbulence, that they'll get you to where you need to go. That's how faith works. You may not see what's ahead, but you trust that God does. You may not understand why you're going through a storm, but you trust that God knows how to bring you through it. And when you trust the pilot, you don't have to panic every time you hit a little turbulence in life. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with faith is because they want answers right away. They want to know why things didn't work out, why they had to go through pain, why they lost that job, why that relationship ended, why that opportunity slipped away. But let me remind you, God doesn't operate on our schedule. He doesn't owe us explanations. He's not looking for our approval on His plan. He is God all by Himself. He sees the full picture while we only see a small part. What looks like a failure to us may actually be a setup for something greater. What feels like rejection now may be protection from something we can't even see yet. Joseph in the Bible is a perfect example. His own brothers sold him into slavery. He was thrown into prison for something he didn't even do. His life looked like a series of losses, setbacks, and betrayals. But God was in control the entire time. What Joseph didn't realize was that every hardship was preparing him for something bigger. If he hadn't been sold, if he hadn't been thrown in prison, he never would have ended up in the palace. He never would have been in a position to save his family and an entire nation. What looked like defeat was actually part of the divine plan. And the same is true for you. You may not understand why you're going through what you're going through right now. You may not see how any good could come out of your pain. But God is in control. He's ordering your steps. He's positioning you for something greater than you could imagine. One of the hardest things to do in life is to surrender, to let go of control, to stop trying to force things to happen and just trust. But when you do, when you fully release your need to understand everything and simply trust that God knows what He's doing, that's when you find peace. That's when you stop worrying. That's when you stop losing sleep over things you can't change. Because when you truly know that God is in control, you realize you don't have to be. Think about how much unnecessary stress we put on ourselves trying to make things happen in our own strength. We try to manipulate situations, rush the process, force outcomes that aren't meant for us, all because we're afraid of what might happen if we don't. But the moment you say, God, I trust you. I trust your timing. I trust your plan, even when I don't understand it. That's when everything changes. That doesn't mean life will suddenly be easy. It doesn't mean you won't face challenges or setbacks. But it does mean that you won't have to carry the weight of it all on your own. You won't have to live in fear, constantly worried about whether or not things will work out. Because you'll know that they will. Not always the way you expected, not always on your timeline, but always in the way that is best for you. So whatever you're facing today, whatever battle you're fighting, whatever uncertainty is weighing on your heart, let this be your reminder. God is in control. Anna, even when it doesn't look like it, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart, He is still in control. And when you trust that, truly trust that, you can stop worrying and start walking in peace. Because the God who created the universe, the God who holds the stars in place, the God who has never failed, that same God is holding you. So take a deep breath. Stop stressing about things you can't control. Stop trying to figure everything out on your own. Stop thinking that just because you don't see a way, there isn't one. God already has a plan. And when you let go and trust him, you'll see that he's been working things out for your good all. Because no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, no matter how uncertain things may seem, God is in control. And that's all you need to know. Life has a way of closing doors in our faces. You apply for the job, but you don't get it. You invest in a relationship and it falls apart. You give your all to something and somehow it still slips away. And in those moments, it's easy to feel defeated. It's easy to believe that rejection means failure, that a closed door means you weren't good enough, that somehow you've missed your shot. But that's not how God works. Rejection is not the end of the road. It's not the final answer. It's not a sign that you should give up. Rejection is redirection. It's God guiding you to something better, something greater, something beyond what you could have imagined for yourself. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something bigger. What feels like a no is actually a not yet, or a this is not for you. Because when one door closes, God is already preparing to open the right one. Think about it. We see life from a limited perspective. We see only what's right in front of us. We make decisions based on what we think is best, what we think will bring us happiness, what we think we need. But God, he sees it all. He knows the things we can't see. He knows that what looks good right now might not be good for us in the long run. He knows that the opportunity we're crying over today might have led to destruction down the line. He knows that the relationship we thought would complete us might have broken us instead. And so, in his love, in his wisdom, he redirects us. That's why you can't take rejection personally. You can't let it shake your faith. Because sometimes that closed door is God's protection. Sometimes that disappointment is God pulling you away from something that was never meant for you. You may have wanted it. You may have prayed for it. Yeah, that doesn't mean it was part of his plan for your life. And if it wasn't, then trust me, you don't want it. Because God's plan is always better than our own. Look at Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream. He knew God had something great in store for him. Before he could step into his destiny, he faced rejection after rejection. His own brothers betrayed him. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused and thrown into prison. If anybody had a reason to give up, it was Joseph. If anybody had a reason to believe that rejection meant failure, it was him. But what he didn't know was that God was using every setback to position him for something greater. If Joseph had never been sold, if he had never been thrown in prison, he would have never ended up in the palace. And when he finally got there, when he finally saw what God had been doing all along, he was able to look back at every rejection and say, what you meant for evil, God used for good. And the same is true for you. You may not understand it right now. You may not see how this rejection is part of God's plan, but one day you will. One day you'll look back and realize that the door that closed, the opportunity that didn't work out, the thing you thought you couldn't live without was actually a blessing in disguise. The key is to trust him in the process, to trust that when he closes one door, he's leading you to another, to trust that when he says no, it's because he has something better in store. But that's not always easy, is it? It's not always easy to wait. It's not always easy to believe that something better is coming when all you see is loss. But faith isn't about seeing. It's about believing. It's about knowing that even in the middle of rejection, God is still working. Think about how much time we waste trying to hold on to things God is trying to remove from our lives. We beg for doors to open that God has already shut. We try to force relationships to work that were never meant to last. We dwell on past failures, replaying them over and over in our minds, instead of looking forward to what God is preparing. The longer you hold on to what wasn't meant for you, the longer you delay what is. The longer you sit in disappointment, the longer you postpone your destiny. So instead of seeing rejection as a failure, start seeing it as God's hand at work. Instead of questioning why things didn't happen the way you wanted, start asking, God, what do you have for me instead? Because if it was meant for you, nothing could have stopped it. If it was part of God's plan, it would have happened. So if it didn't, that means he has something better. When you truly understand that rejection is redirection, you stop fearing the no. You stop worrying about the closed doors. You stop letting disappointments shake your faith easily. Because you know that if God didn't allow it, then it wasn't necessary for your purpose. You know that if something was removed, it was making space for something greater. And when that new door opens, when the right opportunity, the right relationship, the right path finally reveals itself, you'll understand why everything had to happen the way it did. You'll see that the pain had a purpose, that the delay wasn't a denial, that the rejection wasn't to break you, but to build you. So hold your head high. Stop looking back. Stop questioning what's already been decided. Trust that God is leading you to something greater. Trust that He knows what He's doing. Trust that every rejection was actually His hand guiding you towards something better. Because in the end, God doesn't take away without the intention to give something greater. And when the time is right, when you're ready for the blessing He has for you, you'll step into something so much bigger, so much greater, so much more incredible than anything you could have planned for yourself. Rejection is not the end. It's the beginning of something greater. It's redirection. And when you embrace that truth, when you trust the process, you'll stop worrying about the doors that close and start looking forward to the ones that are about to open. We all have plans for our lives. We have dreams, goals, and visions of how we want things to turn out. We map out the future in our minds, thinking, if I do this, then that will happen. If I go here, then I'll be successful. If I follow this path, everything will fall into place. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, things don't go according to plan. The job we wanted doesn't come through. The relationship we thought would last forever ends. The opportunity we were counting on slips away. And in those moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, confused, and even betrayed by life. Hi, Sitsa. Here's the truth. God's plan is better than yours. You may not understand it right now. You may not see why things had to fall apart, why doors closed, or why you're facing obstacles that weren't part of your plan. But what you must remember is that your perspective is limited. You can only see what's in front of you, but God sees the full picture. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what's coming that you don't. He knows what's best for you, even when you don't understand it. Think about it. How many times have you looked back at something you once wanted so badly and realized later that it wouldn't have been good for you? How many times have you thanked God for unanswered prayers, for things that didn't work out the way you wanted? At the time, it felt like disappointment. But in hindsight, you can see that God was protecting you. He was leading you towards something greater. We often try to take control of our own lives, thinking we know best. We make decisions based on what looks good, what feels right, and what seems logical. God's ways are higher than ours. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. What seems like a setback to us is often a setup for something greater. What feels like a delay is actually divine timing. Consider a puzzle. It looks random, incomplete, but when you take a step back and see the whole picture, you realize that every single piece had a place, a purpose. That's how life works. Right now, you may only see one piece. You may be confused about why certain things happened the way they did. One day, you'll look back and see how it all fit together perfectly. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had dreams of greatness, of being in a position of power. But before he could get there, he faced betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. None of it made sense at the time. None of it looked like the plan he had for his life. But God was at work the entire time. Every trial Joseph faced was preparing him, molding him, positioning him for his destiny. If he had never been sold into slavery, he would have never made it to Egypt. If he had never been imprisoned, he would have never met the right people to lead him to the palace. What looked like a disaster was actually divine orchestration. The same is true for you. You may feel like things aren't going according to plan, but that doesn't mean God isn't working. He's aligning the right people, the right opportunities, and the right timing to bring his plan to pass in your life. You may be in a season of waiting, wondering when things will change, but God is never late. He knows exactly when to open the right doors. The problem is we get impatient. We want things to happen on our schedule. We want instant results, but faith requires trust. It requires believing that even when things don't go our way, God is still in control. It requires surrendering our own plans and embracing His. That's not always easy. Surrendering means letting go of what you thought your life would look like. It means trusting that even when your plans fall apart, God's plan is still intact. It means believing that what He has for you is greater than anything you could have imagined for yourself. What do you do when things don't go according to your plan? You keep trusting. You keep moving forward. You stop trying to force doors open that God has already closed. You stop looking back and start looking ahead, because God doesn't close doors to leave you empty-handed. He closes them to lead you to something better. Think about a child who wants candy before dinner. From their perspective, that candy is all they want. They don't understand why their parent says no. They don't see the bigger picture, that their parent isn't withholding something good, but protecting them from something harmful. That's how it is with God. When he says no, when he redirects you, it's not because he's holding something back. It's because he has something better in store. When you truly believe that, you stop getting discouraged when things don't work out the way you planned. You stop feeling like you failed when a door closes. Instead, you learn to say, God, I trust you. I don't understand it, but I know you have a better plan for my life. And when you live with that mindset, you experience peace. You no longer stress over things you can't control. You no longer feel the need to rush the process. You rest in the fact that God is leading you exactly where you need to be. So today, let go of your need to control every detail. Stop trying to figure it all out. Stop worrying about how everything will come together. Trust that God's plan is greater than yours. Trust that he is working behind the scenes, arranging things in ways you can't even see yet. Trust that when he closes one door, it's because he's preparing to open a better one. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know how it's all going to work out. You just have to believe that God does. And when you do that, when you surrender your plans for his, you'll find that his way is always better. Always. Waiting is one of the hardest things to do. In a world that moves fast, where everything is about instant results, waiting can feel frustrating, discouraging, and even painful. We want to see progress. We want things to happen now. We want our prayers answered immediately. But God doesn't operate on our timeline. His timing is perfect, and sometimes that means we have to wait. Waiting doesn't mean God has forgotten about you. It doesn't mean he's ignoring your prayers or that he's withholding something from you. It means he's working behind the scenes, preparing you, preparing the right circumstances, and setting everything in place for the right moment. God sees what you don't see. He knows what you don't know. And because he loves you, he won't release a blessing until you're ready for it. Think about a child who desperately wants to drive a car. No matter how much they beg or plead, a loving parent won't hand over the keys before the child is ready. Why? What seems like a blessing to the child could actually be dangerous if given at the wrong time. The same is true with God, though. Sometimes the things we're praying for, the doors we want to open, and the opportunities we're chasing aren't what's best for us right now. They may be part of our future, but if we receive them too soon, they could end up harming us instead of helping us. That's why God makes us wait. Not to punish us, not to frustrate us, but to prepare us. The waiting season is a growing season. It's where God develops your character, strengthens your faith, and builds the endurance you'll need for the next level. If you received everything you wanted the moment you asked for it, you wouldn't be ready to handle it. You might waste the blessing, take it for granted, or lack the maturity to manage it well. Look at the story of David in the Bible. He was anointed as king when he was just a young shepherd boy. But he didn't step into his destiny right away. Instead, he had to wait. He went through years of hardship, running from Saul, hiding in caves, and facing countless obstacles. To the outside world, it may have looked like nothing was happening, like his promise was delayed. But in reality, God was preparing him. He was teaching him how to lead, how to trust, and how to rely on him. By the time David finally became king, he wasn't just a boy with a promise. He was a man ready for the responsibility. The same is true for you. If God is making you wait, it's because he's preparing you for something greater. Every delay, every obstacle, every moment of uncertainty is shaping you into the person you need to be for what's ahead. But waiting isn't just about preparation. It's also about trust. Do you believe that he knows what's best for you? It's easy to trust when things are happening quickly, when doors are opening, and when life is going according to plan. But true faith is built in the waiting. It's in the moments when you don't see progress, when you don't understand what's taking so long, and when you're tempted to give up. One of the biggest mistakes we make in waiting seasons is trying to force things to happen on our own. We get impatient, we start doubting, and we take matters into our own hands. But when we step ahead of God, we only make things more difficult. Look at Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son. But when the promise didn't happen as quickly as they expected, they decided to control. Sarah gave her servant, Hagar, to Abraham, and they had a child together. But that wasn't God's plan. And because they tried to rush the promise, they created unnecessary problems. Eventually, Sarah did give birth to Isaac, the son God had promised all along. But their impatience caused heartache along the way. What does that teach us? Worth it, his timing is never wrong. The blessing he has for you will come at the right moment, not a second too soon and not a second too late. And when it does, you'll see why the wait was necessary. So, what should you do while you wait? You should prepare. You should grow. You should strengthen your faith. Waiting is not wasting. If you're single and waiting for the right relationship, use this time to become the best version of yourself. If you're waiting for a new job, develop your skills and grow in your current position. If you're waiting for a dream to come to pass, don't sit back and do nothing. Take steps of faith, learn, grow, and trust that God is moving even when you can't see it. Most importantly, keep your faith strong. The enemy loves to use waiting seasons to plant seeds of doubt. He'll whisper lies like God forgot about you. Nothing is ever going to change. Maybe this isn't for you. But don't believe those lies. If God gave you a promise, he will fulfill it. He never fails. His word never returns void. If he said he would do it, he will. He will. Your job is to stay faithful, to keep trusting, and to not let impatience rob you of your blessing. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't see the harvest right away, but he knows that something is happening beneath the surface. He waters the seeds, cares for the soil, and trusts that in the right season, the plants will grow. That's how waiting works. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean God isn't working. So don't let waiting make you weary. Don't let delays make you doubt. God is preparing you. He is strengthening you. He is aligning the right people, the right opportunities, and the right timing. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place. One day, you'll look back and understand why you had to wait. You'll see that the delays weren't denials. They were divine setups. You'll realize that what felt like a setback was actually God's protection. And you'll be thankful that things didn't happen on your timeline, but on His, because God's timing is always perfect. And when you trust Him, when you surrender your plans and embrace His, you'll see that everything happens exactly as it's supposed to, right on time. Fear and doubt have a way of creeping into our minds, especially when we're faced with uncertainty. When things don't go the way we planned, when doors close, when we're forced to wait longer than we expected, it's easy to start questioning everything. What if things never work out? What if I made the wrong decision? What if I'm not good enough? What if God has forgotten about me? These thoughts can be overwhelming, making us feel stuck, paralyzed by fear, and uncertain about the future. But here's the truth. Fear is a liar. Doubt is a thief. They steal your peace, your confidence, and your faith. They make you question what you already know to be true. But if you let fear and doubt take control, you'll miss out on the blessings that God has for you. You'll hesitate when you should move forward. You'll shrink back when you should step out in faith. You'll spend your days worrying about things that God has already taken care of. God never intended for you to live in fear. Over and over in the Bible, He tells us, do not be afraid. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. Why? Because He knows that fear will keep you from walking in your purpose. Fear will make you settle for less than what God has for you. Fear will keep you stuck in situations that were only meant to be temporary. But the good news is that you don't have to live in fear. You don't have to let doubt control your mind, because the same God who created the universe, the same God who opened the Red Sea, the same God who raised Jesus from the dead, that same God is with you. When fear and doubt creep in, the best thing you can do is remind yourself of who God is and what He has already done. Look back at your life. How many times has God come through for you? How many times has He made a way when there seemed to be no way? How many times has He provided, protected, and guided you? If He did it before, He will do it again. He hasn't failed you yet, and He never will. Think about Peter in the Bible. When Jesus called him to walk on water, Peter stepped out in faith. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was doing the impossible. But the moment he let fear and doubt take over, he started to sink. The same happens to us. As long as we focus on God, we can move forward with confidence. But the moment we focus on our fears, our circumstances, or our limitations, we start sinking into worry, anxiety, and discouragement. So how do you overcome fear and doubt? You replace them with faith. Faith and fear cannot exist in the same space. The more you feed your faith, the weaker your fear becomes. And how do you feed your faith? You spend time with God. You read His Word. You remind yourself of His promises. You speak life over your situation instead of negativity. Instead of saying, what if things don't work out? Start saying, I trust that God has a plan. Not good enough, remind yourself. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Later, God will give me the strength I need. The enemy loves to use fear and doubt to keep you from stepping into your destiny. He knows that if he can make you afraid, if he can make you second guess yourself, then you won't move forward. But here's what you need to remember. Fear is not from God. The Bible says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That means when you feel afraid, when doubt tries to take over, you have the authority to reject it. You have the power to say, I will not let fear control me. I will not let doubt stop me. I will trust in the Lord. Doesn't mean you'll never feel fear. It means you won't let fear stop you. It means you'll move forward even when you're uncertain. It means you'll trust God even when you don't understand. It means you'll walk by faith, not by sight. The truth is, every great person in the Bible faced moments of doubt. Moses doubted he was good enough to lead God's people. Gideon doubted he was strong enough to win the battle. Sarah doubted she would ever have a child. But in every single case, God proved them wrong. He showed them that it wasn't about their strength, their ability, or their understanding. It was about Him. And the same is true for you. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to figure everything out. You just have to trust that God is in control. He sees what you don't see. He knows what's ahead, and He is working all things together for your good. So the next time fear tries to creep in, remind yourself of God's faithfulness. The next time doubt whispers in your ear, speak back with truth. The next time you feel overwhelmed, take a deep breath and declare, a God is in control, because He is. And when you truly believe that, when you fully surrender your worries to Him, you'll find peace. You'll stop stressing over things that are out of your hands. You'll stop letting fear dictate your decisions. You'll stop doubting whether or not things will work out, because they will. Not because of your strength, but because of His. Not because of your understanding, but because of His wisdom. Because of your plan, but because of His perfect plan. So don't let fear and doubt hold you back. Walk in confidence, step out in faith. Trust that God has already gone before you, making a way where there seems to be no way. And when you do, you'll see that fear was never bigger than your God. Doubt was never stronger than His promises. And everything you were worried about was already in His hands. Life is full of challenges, setbacks, and unexpected detours. Sometimes things don't go the way we planned, and it can be tempting to give. We start to wonder if we're on the right path, if our dreams are still worth pursuing, and if God is still working in our lives. The waiting can feel long, the obstacles can seem impossible, and the disappointments can be overwhelming. But no matter how difficult things get, you must keep moving forward. God never promised that the road would be easy, but He did promise that He would be with you every step of the way. He didn't bring you this far just to leave you. He didn't place dreams in your heart just to let them fade away. He didn't open doors for you just so you could turn around and walk away when things got hard. God is calling you to keep going, even when it's tough, even when you feel like giving up, even when you don't see the progress you expected. The enemy would love nothing more than to make you stop. He wants you to get discouraged. He wants you to doubt. He wants you to question whether God is really working. But here's what you need to remember. Your breakthrough is on the other side of your perseverance. If you stop now, you'll never see what God was preparing for you. If you give up, you'll miss out on the blessings that were just ahead. Think about the Israelites when they were leaving Egypt. God had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, a place of abundance, a home of their own. But to get there, they had to go through the wilderness. The journey wasn't easy. They faced hunger, thirst, and opposition, and many of them wanted to turn back. They complained, they doubted, and some even wished they were back in slavery because at least it was familiar. But what they didn't realize was that they were closer to the promise than they thought. They were right on the edge of breakthrough, but their lack of faith kept them wandering longer than necessary. How many times do we do the same thing? We start off strong, full of faith, believing that God is leading us to something great. But when the process takes longer than we expected, when the obstacles feel too big, we start to doubt. We start looking back at what's familiar, even if it wasn't good for us. We start thinking, maybe I should just give up. Maybe this isn't meant for me. Maybe I'll never get there. But if you stop now, you'll never know how close you really were. You may be just one step away from your breakthrough, one more prayer, one more act of faith, one more moment of perseverance. Keep moving forward. The Bible says, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. That means that if you keep going, if you stay faithful, if you trust in God's timing, you will see the reward. But if you quit too soon, you'll miss out on what God was preparing for you. Look at the story of Joseph. He had dreams of greatness, of leadership, of purpose. But before he reached his destiny, he faced betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. It seemed like everything was falling apart. It would have been easy for Joseph to give up, to believe that his dreams would never come to pass. But he didn't. He stayed faithful. He kept trusting. He kept moving forward. And in God's perfect timing, he was elevated to a position of power. He became second in command of Egypt, and his dreams became reality. What if Joseph had given up? What if he had stopped believing when he was in prison? He would have never seen the fulfillment of God's plan. And the same is true for you. You don't know what's on the other side of your struggle. You don't know how close you are to breakthrough. You don't know how God is working behind the scenes, setting things up for you. That's why you can't stop now. The road may not be easy, but God is with you. He is strengthening you, guiding you, and preparing you. Every challenge you face is making you stronger. Every delay is teaching you patience. Every closed door is leading you to something better. God is not wasting your pain. He is using it to refine you, to build you, and to prepare you for greater things. So what do you do when you feel like giving up?
You remind yourself of God's promises.
You remember how far He has brought you. You speak life over your situation. You declare that you will not quit, that you will not lose faith, that you will keep trusting, keep believing, and keep moving forward. And you take it one step at a time. You don't have to figure it all out today. You don't have to see the entire path ahead. You just have to take the next step. Trusting that with each step, God is leading you closer to where you need to be. The enemy will try to make you believe that it's too late, that you've missed your chance, that you're not good enough. But those are lies. As long as you have breath in your lungs, God is not finished with you. As long as you keep moving forward, He will continue working in your life. Don't give up. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let doubt hold you back. Keep pressing on. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Because God has something incredible in store for you. And if you keep moving forward, if you keep holding on to faith, if you refuse to quit, you will see the goodness of God. You will walk into the blessings He has prepared for you. You will see doors open that you never expected. You will realize that every struggle, every setback, and every delay was part of His perfect plan to lead you to something greater. Keep moving forward. Your breakthrough is coming. Your blessing is on the way. And when you look back, you'll be thankful that you didn't stop, that you didn't give up, that you trusted God even when you didn't understand. Because He is faithful, and He will bring you exactly where you're meant to be, right on time.